Hey Astro Kids, and welcome back. And on the polls, I have asked those of you what you wanted me to do in the next videos following this Nakshatra Rising series. There was an overwhelming amount of people who wanted me to get into the moon signs. So that is where we will go as far as this next journey, is this moon sign series. And for those who are looking for their moon within their nakshatra, we are not going to get into that yet. I want to make sure that we are understanding the foundation of everything first. And so we will start off this series with the moon sign through the zodiac signs using Vedic astrology. So I've already gone through those moon signs using Western tropical astrology years ago, but we're going to revisit this from the perspective of Vedic astrology. So that is where we will start. And so in this first video here, we're going to start off here with what it looks like to have your moon sign in Aries. So let's go ahead and jump right into this. So the first thing that we have to understand is, what is the moon sign here in Vedic astrology? The moon is representing the mind. If we think about it, those who are going through different phases and cycles within their lives are also in tune with the different phases and cycles of the moon. And we see this especially at certain periods of time where the moon goes through a full moon or a eclipse, where there are different behaviors that people will go through. So the moon is directly related to our mind and the functioning of our behavior. It is the psyche. And so the moon is going to tell us all about how a person thinks, how they feel, how their behavioral patterns and cycles will be. The moon is also connected to the mother. So this talks about the relationship to your mother and your early upbringing as well. And of course, that will shape how your emotional behavior will be, what types of things will nurture you, what you will need in terms of emotional and material security within your life. And so this is where the moon is all centered around. The moon also represents change and fluctuation. And so anywhere where the moon is controlling in your chart, there's going to be shifts and changes happening in that area, right? The moon actually is the sign that originally controls Cancer, which is all about our motherly nourishment, our home life, our material security, our comfort, our luxury, right? Cancer being connected to the fourth house, which is all about the things that bring us comfort and security within our lives. That fourth house is our home environment, our connection to our mother, and all of the conveniences and luxuries that we like to have in our lives. And so this is what the moon is all connected to. Now, the other thing that we have to understand is that the moon has no enemies. So the moon is great friends with the sun and Mercury, but as far as the other planets go, it is actually having a neutral relationship. Now, the moon does have difficulty with Rahu and Ketu, as those are those shadowy planets that go against what the moon is all about, right? Rahu and Ketu are all about the illusionary world, the illusionary desires, the unfulfilled, unsatisfied parts of who we are. The moon is all about nurturing. It is all about supporting us. It is all about true satisfaction and comfort within our lives. And so there is a little bit of an inimical relationship between the moon and those shadowy planets. However, for the most part, the moon has no enemies with any planets. It simply loves being with Mercury and the sun, of course, because the moon and the sun are constantly together, right? We see this with the new moon, and even when they are opposing one another, we get this full moon. So there is a constant relationship between the sun and the moon that is happening here. Also, Mercury is very quick and agile, just like the moon is. And with the moon controlling our mind and Mercury controlling our quick thinking, our logic, our skill sets, our entrepreneurship skills, our communication skills, right? So the mind and the logical functioning and technical, practical skills of Mercury go hand in hand with one another. Now, the question of why isn't Saturn then having a good relationship with the moon? Because Saturn is also very intellectual, very practical, but remember that Saturn represents the hardships of life. Saturn is here to teach us about the difficulties, the struggles. Saturn is the planet of maturity. So it matures with time. It gives us the things that we want over time as we're learning these lessons, as we're going through these difficult situations in our lives. So Saturn pumps the brake on a lot of our comfort and enjoyment in life. Saturn is not about short-term gratification. Saturn is about getting long-term results. And so this is one of the reasons why the moon and Saturn really have more of a neutral relationship. Also, because if we look at the zodiac, we can see that the sign of Cancer and the sign of Capricorn sit on opposite axes from one another. So Capricorn is controlled by Saturn and Cancer is controlled by the moon. And so we do get a little bit of this inimical type of relationship here between Saturn and the moon. Once again, from the moon's perspective, there are no enemies. This is a neutral connection. But from Saturn's position, it is a little bit of a challenging connection between the moon and Saturn. There is this difficulty in terms of the moon being about the nurturing, the satisfaction, the things that give us comfort, and Saturn being about the hardships, the difficulties, the reality of life, right? And even if we look at it in terms of the houses, the moon originally rules that fourth house in the natural zodiac, which is about our mother, our homeland, our comfort, our luxury, our household. That is where we feel most comfortable, where we feel most safe and secure. However, the opposite of that, where Saturn resides, as far as the houses go, would be the 10th house and the 11th house, which is where we go out to work, is where we are presenting ourselves professionally in the public world, where we have to deal with reality and the world around us. It is focused and centered around our work, our career, our efforts, our achievements. And so that is having to go outside of our comfort zone. And so once again, we see this conflict that is happening between both of those positions. Now, Cancer, which is also, once again, the sign that is ruled by the moon, is very intellectual. It is very imaginative, very intuitive, very creative. And so we also see this through the moon. The moon gives incredible psychic abilities and intuition. It also gives a very deep imagination and creativity. And so this is also a huge part of what the moon is also influencing. Now, as we get into the moon in Aries, the reason why we broke down all of that is to understand that once again, the moon has no enemies. So here, as we come into this, the moon is in a neutral position as it comes into the sign of Aries, as the moon looks at Mars in a neutral way. So what is happening here when the moon comes into Aries? Now, once again, the moon is representing the mind, the creativity, the imagination, the way that we think and feel, our behavioral patterns and cycles, the things that bring us nourishment in life, our comforts, right? It is the changing and fluctuating factor within our lives that is driving all of these different patterns and cycles and behaviors and this mentality that we have based upon our life experience. Aries, as we have discussed in previous videos, is the first sign in the zodiac. It is this sign that comes in with the energy, the passion, the drive to get things started. And so Aries is filled with a ton of willpower and determination, right? Aries is controlled by Mars, which is the soldier in the planetary cabinet. Mars is that military general. So it gives this very militant attitude of charging in, taking charge, getting things done, this fierce determination that is here in the sign of Aries is enough to get things started and moving, right? And this is a movable sign, Aries, as it is a cardinal sign, so it is a directional sign. It is all about the movement, the change, the initiating of an activity. And it is in a fire sign as well. So we get this movable fire energy where the fire is all about the passion, the energy, the drive. And so there's a lot of this quick and spontaneous action that is connected towards the sign of Aries, where those who have this position tend to charge into things, to initiate. They are the trailblazers, the ones who are getting everything started, who are making things happen in life. So there's a lot of confidence, a lot of willpower, a lot of determination that is here behind the sign of Aries. And so what happens when the moon comes into Aries? Well, this is a little bit of a challenging position here, because here we get this very childlike, impulsive energy of Aries that is combining with the moon, which is about our emotions. And so this gives very quick emotional reactions. This gives a lot of impulsiveness, and especially depending upon where this is as far as the Nakshatras go, right? We did a whole series right before this about the rising sign throughout the 27 Nakshatras and how each of those differ from one another. Even within the same sign, if you were born in a different Nakshatra, that can give different results. And so we can see the same thing in the moon. And so as we move through this series of the moon through the different zodiac signs, we will start to get into the different Nakshatras through moon sign as well, to give you a deeper look into how this is affecting you. But in general, we understand that Aries is broken up into 3 Nakshatras, the first being Ashwini, which is this energy of this explosion of getting things started, right? This Nakshatra here of Ashwini is ruled by Ketu, and Ketu is a very explosive energy that is capable of endings and beginnings, and that Ashwini Nakshatra is the star of transport. It is represented by a horse head, and so we get this element of a horse running free in the wind, which gives this great energy, this great drive, this great spontaneity to get things started, to get things moving. That is what that first Nakshatra of Aries is all about. Now, as we move forward into Bharani, which is our next Nakshatra in Aries, we get a little bit of a different energy, as that is the star of restraint, and it is being controlled by Venus. Venus, which is quite different from the ruler of Aries, which is Mars. And so in that midsection there of Aries, where we get into Bharani, there is a little bit more of a artistic and creative nature that is in there. This is a little bit more of a Nakshatra that has a tendency towards planning, towards gathering information. It is less of this spontaneous energy in the sense of charging ahead, initiating things. However, on an emotional level, there can be an impulsivity because we're getting this explosive passion from this combination of Venus and Mars, which also gives a very explosive energy that is capable of great change and transformation. Now, as we get to the end of Aries, we move into the Krittika Nakshatra, and that is quite a different energy from Bharani and even from Ashwini, even though here in Krittika we have a lot of energy, a lot of drive, a lot of determination. But here the energy becomes very fierce, very dominating. This is a sun-controlled Nakshatra. And again, we're going to go into more depth in future videos. But this is to give you an idea of how these energies will play out. So here in this Krittika Nakshatra, this is more of a detailed and precise Nakshatra that can be extremely dominating and controlling. There's a lot of great leadership skills, a lot of this great ability to dominate and to take over here in this last Nakshatra. So we can see how if the moon is in Ashwini, it especially is going to give a lot of that spontaneous and excitable energy. If it is in the Bharani Nakshatra, it's going to give a lot of creative powers and mystical knowledge to pull from as well. If it is there in that Krittika Nakshatra, it's going to give more of a critical and career-oriented dominating approach as well. So we can get a sense of how these energies will play out depending upon where the moon is. Now, once again, the moon being in the sign of Aries, in general, is typically going to give a very spontaneous, impulsive, emotional state. This is going to give a mind that is restless, that is active, right? These are people who are always thinking, who are always in their heads, who are always busy with something. There's a lot of this energy that is constantly going, constantly changing, constantly moving with this impulsivity and this movable fire energy here that we have here within the sign of Aries. So this is going to give a little bit of this restlessness and this fast-paced thinking here within this Nakshatra. There may be a little bit of a difficulty in terms of the attention span, being able to hold on and to grasp onto longer or deeper conversations here within this Nakshatra. There's a tendency to want to speed through things, to power through things here with this position of the moon in Aries.